Have you ever imagined what it would be like to reunite with the love of your life after years, under completely unexpected circumstances? Annie never thought her simple and challenging routine could be turned upside down in the blink of an eye. What seemed like an ordinary morning would soon become the start of a story filled with emotion, reunions, and second chances that you simply cannot miss. It was a cold, overcast morning, with a gentle breeze making the leaves dance along the sidewalks. Annie, a young woman with deep brown eyes and her hair tied in a casual bun, walked through the bustling city streets. Her worn coat offered little protection from the cold, but she held her posture firm, despite the evident exhaustion on her face. Life wasn't easy for Annie, but giving up had never been an option. Annie worked as a sales assistant in a luxury clothing store. The place was dazzling, filled with dresses fit for princesses and suits that exuded elegance. But Annie knew this world wasn't hers. She was there out of sheer necessity. Her mother, Rosie, was ill, and Annie was the sole breadwinner for them both. Arriving at the store that morning, Annie was greeted by Emma, the manager, a woman always impeccably dressed, her gaze sharp and judgmental. "Good morning, Annie. Let's hope you manage not to ruin anything today," Emma said with a sarcastic smile. Annie felt a lump in her throat tighten, but responded politely. She was used to being treated this way. The day dragged on, tense as usual. When Annie accidentally bumped into a mannequin, sending it crashing to the floor with a thunderous sound of shattering glass, Emma wasted no time. Furious, she shouted, "You're fired," without giving Annie a chance to defend herself. Walking out of the store with teary eyes and a bowed head, Annie felt more lost than ever. Back home, she found Rosie resting on the couch, a shawl draped over her shoulders, her expression serene despite their hardships. "I lost my job, Mom," Annie said, her voice trembling as tears welled up. Rosie, sensing her daughter's heavy burden, opened her arms to invite her closer. Annie sat beside her, and Rosie grasped her hands firmly, radiating a silent strength that Annie had always admired. "My dear, listen to me," Rosie began, her voice soft yet resolute. "Life is full of ups and downs, like the waves of the sea. But you are strong, stronger than you think. God never abandons us, even when everything seems lost. Something better is coming, I can feel it in my heart." Annie let the tears flow as her mother's words resonated deeply. It felt as if hope itself was gently wrapping its arms around her. "But Mom, I'm so tired. It feels like every door is slammed in my face. How are we going to pay for your medications now?" she asked, her voice cracking. Rosie wiped Annie's tears gently. "My daughter, I believe in you. Not just because you're my daughter, but because I see the strength within you. Every challenge we've faced has made us stronger. Don't let fear extinguish your light. Remember, even on the darkest days, the dawn always comes." Her mother's words didn't just warm Annie's heart, they ignited a spark of determination. She knew there was still much to do, but in that moment, something shifted within her. She decided that, no matter how tough the road ahead, she would find a way. In the days that followed, Annie distributed resumes all over the city. The responses, however, were always negative. Until one morning, while scanning the classifieds in a newspaper, she saw a job listing for a nanny at a mansion. It wasn't her dream job, but it was an opportunity. Mustering her courage, Annie dressed in her best outfit, a simple blouse and black trousers, and headed to the interview. The mansion was breathtaking. Tall gates, meticulously maintained gardens, and a level of luxury Annie had never imagined. She was greeted by the butler, who escorted her inside. There she met Clarice, an enchanting little girl with curly hair and sparkling eyes. Clarice smiled at Annie, and in that moment, something shifted. Annie felt an instant connection with the child. After a series of interviews and paperwork, Annie got the job. Taking care of Clarice brought her immense joy, and she was grateful to have found this opportunity. But what she didn't expect was to come face to face with Liam, Clarice's father and the love of her past. The moment she saw him, Annie froze. Time seemed to stand still. He looked more mature, his features shaped by experiences she couldn't begin to imagine, but his eyes still carried the intensity that had always left her breathless. Annie and Liam had a past filled with magical moments. They first met in a small town square, where Liam used to play his guitar, hoping to earn a few coins while dreaming of becoming a musician. Annie, then a student with big dreams, would often pass by, studying to the sound of his music. That's how their conversations began. Between laughter and promises, their love blossomed. They planned a future together, but life had other plans. Liam's father, a stern and ambitious man, disapproved of their relationship and decided to send his son abroad to study, far away from Annie. Liam tried to resist, but the pressure was overwhelming. Their goodbye was heart-wrenching, filled with tears and whispered words of love under the starlit sky. Annie waited for months, hoping for a letter, a sign, but all she received was silence. Heartbroken, she moved on with her life, believing he had forgotten her. Now, years later, there he was, standing in the mansion's living room, looking at her with the same intensity as before. Liam seemed equally shaken, as though he couldn't believe she was real. In the days that followed, their interactions were unavoidable. Between taking care of Clarice and brief conversations in the hallways, memories began to resurface, like pieces of a puzzle they couldn't ignore. Annie remembered how Liam made her feel alive, how he encouraged her to dream big. But she also remembered the pain of losing him. Her heart was a whirlwind of emotions, torn between the joy of their reunion and the fear of being hurt again. Even so, Annie decided to focus on her job. Caring for Clarice was one of the few things that brought her peace. The little girl was sweet and innocent, always ready with a smile that could brighten any room. Annie quickly grew attached to Clarice, finding in her a source of joy and a reminder of how pure love can transform hearts. Annie's dedication to the child's well-being was so evident that it often helped her divert her mind from the storm of emotions stirred by Liam's presence. Yet, it was impossible to ignore him entirely. Each time she saw him, whether passing in the hallways or entering the room where she read stories to Clarice, her heart raced. Liam, in turn, always seemed to find an excuse to be nearby. Their gazes met often, filled with unspoken memories and feelings that refused to stay buried. Annie tried to avoid him, focusing on her routine with Clarice, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. One night, while putting Clarice to bed, Annie realized just how deeply she had bonded with the girl. Sitting by the bedside, gently stroking Clarice's curly hair, she murmured, "Good night, my little one. You're a ray of light in my life." But as she left the room, her heart felt heavy. How could she navigate her conflicting feelings for Liam while continuing to work in this house? Liam seemed just as conflicted. He watched her from afar, recognizing the strength and kindness he had always admired in Annie. Despite his resolve to move forward, he knew they needed to confront the past before they could find a way to the future. "I never wanted to leave, Annie," he said one day, his voice low and filled with emotion. "My family took me away from you. When I returned, I looked for you, but it was too late." Those words brought tears to Annie's eyes. She had never known that Liam had searched for her. That evening, as Clarice slept, they talked by the fireplace, reminiscing about the past, sharing their pain and hopes. The love between them, which had never truly faded, began to reignite. Still, Annie hesitated. Could she trust him again? With each passing day, the bond between them grew stronger. Clarice, unaware of their shared history, seemed to be the glue bringing them closer together. The little girl began calling them "my family," and those words made Annie's heart skip a beat. Slowly, she realized that perhaps destiny, with all its twists and turns, was giving them a second chance at happiness. One evening, Liam finally mustered the courage to talk about what had happened after they were separated. "Annie, when I left, it broke me. I tried to rebuild my life. While I was abroad, I met someone. At first, I thought we could build something together. She was lively and fun, and when she told me she was pregnant, I felt happy at the idea of becoming a father. I thought I had found a stable future at last." His words hung in the air, filled with regret and longing. The past had left its scars, but it was clear that both Liam and Annie still carried feelings they could no longer deny. What lay ahead would depend on their courage to embrace their history and the possibilities of tomorrow. Liam paused, his expression growing more serious. But everything changed when Clarice was born. Her mother began to realize that the life we were living wasn't what she wanted. I think the responsibility, the weight of being a mother, was too much for her. One day, she simply had the courage to leave, without any warning, without even leaving a note. She left me alone with our daughter, who had barely started her life. I felt like my world had collapsed, Annie. It was as if everything I knew crumbled around me. But the love I had for that beautiful baby, who is now the sweet little girl you care for so dearly, gave me strength. She was the reason I kept going, the one who gave me the courage to move forward and fight for the best for the two of us. He lowered his head for a moment, as if to collect himself, then continued. Over time, I realized I needed to return to my parents. They helped me a lot with Clarice, providing the support I needed to raise her and give her a decent life. That's how we ended up here, and since then, it's been me and Clarice, facing everything together as a family. Liam took a deep breath before looking directly at Annie. I moved on with my life, Annie. I met people, had fleeting romances, but nothing ever erased you from my heart. You were my first love, the one I could never forget. Circumstances beyond our control took you away from me. And now, by some twist of fate, you're back. I can't help but feel there's a purpose to this, that maybe this is our second chance. Annie listened to every word with her heart heavy, torn between the weight of his revelations and the intensity of the moment. She had never imagined Liam had gone through so much, and the sincerity in his voice stirred something inside her, as if a new chapter was about to begin. She looked at him with eyes full of emotion but also caution. Liam, while you were out there trying to move on, I was trying to do the same. But unlike your life, mine was filled with hard work, without any adventures. I spent years fighting to support my mom, juggling jobs that brought no joy, but were necessary for survival. As for love, you were the only one who ever held a place in my heart. For a long time, I believed you had simply abandoned me, and that hurt me deeply. But even with all that pain, I could never forget you. Liam grasped Annie's hands more firmly, as if to convey reassurance. Annie, I never wanted you to feel that way. I never wanted you to think I had forgotten or abandoned you. You were taken from me, but you never left my heart. Now, after everything we've been through, all I want is a chance to prove that our love can still be real. Liam's words echoed in Annie's heart, bringing a mix of relief and hope. Slowly, the two decided to rebuild their connection, brick by brick, starting with small gestures and shared moments alongside Clarice, who remained the sweetest bond between them. After many heartfelt conversations and shared moments, Annie chose to give love a chance. They began to build a life together, not just as a couple, but as a family with Clarice. Rosie, seeing her daughter's happiness, recovered miraculously, bringing even more joy to their lives. On their wedding day, a simple and intimate ceremony, Annie looked into Liam's eyes and said, "You've shown me that love can be reborn, even when all seems lost." With tears in his eyes, Liam replied, "I promise to care for you and Clarice for the rest of my life." The guests applauded as the two sealed their union with a kiss. From that day forward, Annie found not just love, but also strength within herself. She learned that life, with its twists and challenges, is fertile ground for transformation. The paths aren't always easy, and sometimes what feels like an ending is merely the beginning of something greater. Annie understood that true love endures time and adversity but also requires courage, forgiveness, and surrender. Her and Liam's story proved that even the most wounded hearts can heal, and that second chances are gifts from destiny for those who dare to believe again in the power of love and hope. So she walked into the future with the certainty that together, they could face anything. And you? Have you ever stopped to think if you're open to the second chances life might offer you? Like Annie and Liam, would you have the courage to confront the past and embrace the present with faith and hope for the future? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to share it with someone you love. Comment below what moved you most and how you see second chances in your own life. And for more inspiring stories like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your support motivates us to keep bringing messages of love and hope to you.